My guest today, worship leader, musician, songwriter, lyricist. Lyricist in the way that it comes out in his everyday speech. Stoner turned Christian. Paul Trinko.
Nice. Oh, man.
You kind of carry that vibe?
Definitely.
In like how you talk? Like,
bro, I don't know what you're saying, man. I do not carry that at all. To be honest, like before I ever smoked weed or partied or anything like that, because I didn't do that until like later high school, people used to always assume that I did just because.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just a little spacey sometimes, so it makes sense. It makes
and that's
sense.
not what I meant at all.
Yeah, that's all right. Even if you did, I wouldn't even be offended.
Okay.
Pretty
Good, because that's actually what I meant.
That's exactly what I meant. I meant it in the harshest way possible.
Yeah,
Anything I say, assume I mean it.
I just wanted to check if you were okay with that before I told you straight up.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what you do, what types of things you're involved in. What do you do practically?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been a musician for a very long time, like since taught myself drums when I was really young. The neighbor across the street just randomly gave us like a really old drum set from like the 1940s or 50s, like a bass drum that was like massive.
Oh yeah, gongy sounding.
It was crazy. So I learned how to play on that, and then took some lessons and loved music, but I knew I wasn't like built to be a drummer. It just didn't. There was just something that I always just felt like a little bit too limited with it, but I always loved music, so that was kind of the first thing. And then beginning of high school, my mom offered to buy me a guitar, and I didn't want one because I thought it was super cliche to play guitar.
Cliche.
Yeah, I just didn't like the idea of I don't want to be a guitar player, and but she bought me one anyway. But she was a believer. She's been a believer my whole life, and she always talks about how she felt like she was supposed to get me a guitar. So I got a guitar and like immediately realized that like, oh, okay, this is like a thing for me. This makes sense. It's kind of like playing drums, but you can, add some melody to it. So,
but it's better.
But it's way better. Yeah. For me, it's way better. So that led me to playing in some bands. And I found out I really liked writing music a lot, even though I was tone deaf when I first started writing music.
Oh, really?
Ended up, being in some bands, and I suppose this is kind of a long answer to the question. I can go. Do you want me to go?
Go longer.
Do you want me to go longer? Yeah. Okay, this is a podcast. I forgot this is a
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah. So I played in some bands and really loved writing. And even though I was tone deaf, started to realize that if I played electric guitar, you couldn't really hear me singing that well. So I could kind of learn how to sing hidden behind the distortion of electric guitar.
Yeah, it's like when you try to hide a fart with a cough.
Basically, yeah. That's exactly what I was doing.
Nice.
With my voice. I also realized that like I don't have a very big vocal range. It's like maybe an octave and a half or something like really like pretty small for a singer. So
like today? You do?
Yeah, today
okay.
I don't really have I have a lot like I'm able to use it better because I'm aware of it and I work around it, and because my voice is lower now, I can really use the low end of it, and
so it has grown a bit.
It has grown a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I don't do a lot of the high stuff anymore. So
what key do you sing in usually?
There's a couple, but I do a lot of stuff in E. I do a lot of stuff in F, and I'd say those are probably the two most common. Most songs, that's like occasionally I'll go up to G, and occasionally I'll go down to D. But I almost do nothing in C, which is strange because that's the key that supposedly is the easiest for everyone to sing in. So
yeah.
I also, when I started writing, I realized, I can write stuff and then I can sing that. Like I don't sing other people's songs, but I do sing my own stuff better because I can tailor the vocal lines to where my voice is. And I love writing lyrics. Like I love taking ideas and putting them into something. So it just made sense. Like this is definitely, though I haven't done as much writing over the last, I don't know, I'd say like 5 to 7 years, which is because I've been doing more music directing than anything. So I just haven't had the
with your church.
Okay. Yeah, with church. So I work at Honey Creek Church as a music director, and I've been doing that for about 9 years now there. Amazing job. It's an amazing job, an amazing place to work, and a great church. I mean, no church is perfect, but I
obviously
really,
you love it.
I love it, and they've been so good to me and so patient with me, because I this is the first place I ever led worship at. So I ever led worship on staff at. So
yeah. How many songs have you written? And I didn't realize that. Like, I thought you just wrote. I feel like you just wrote a couple songs or something, like, because you're working on a music video. So that's from a song that you've written just years ago.
Long time ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a very old song. Like, how many songs total have I written?
Yeah. How many songs have you written?
Anywhere between 50 and 100 songs throughout the course of my life, I'd say. I was always a little bit of a slower writer with stuff.
So you would say that's not that many?
That's not a lot at all.
Okay.
Not for a lot. Like, people who are like songwriters, they write probably 50 to, people who are songwriters probably write like 50 songs in a year. So, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you are a songwriter, but
just a slower songwriter.
Sure.
For better or for worse, So,
yeah.
How many songs have you written?
Maybe 20 at the most. Like I said, I started playing guitar a lot more when I went to college in 2011 or 2012.
Okay.
And that's when I started writing songs. And yeah, it was like very few. I really do like writing songs, so I want to do it more. It's just I still take long. Like, I just wrote a song a little bit ago, and that was the fastest one I've written. Last song I remember that I wrote took me at least a year to write it. How about you? Is it like that?
Sometimes it's like that. For me, it depends too on, like, I used to write songs much differently, which is interesting. I was thinking about this actually, like, recently, because an old EP that I made when I was like 19, like, we recorded it to tape with a band. It recently, like, we got the reels bounced to digital, so it's getting remixed.
Okay.
Just 3 songs, and I was listening to it, and I'm like, wow, I used to write so much differently, because I just didn't. I had emotions, like emotional things to convey, but I didn't have like these clear ideas to convey in the same way that now, like, and maybe that's from leading worship. It's like I've sung so many extremely well written songs that I feel like God's kind of done like a Karate Kid thing, like the wax on, wax off. Like, he's kind of shown me, hey, this is writing simply, repeating certain concepts, having a really clear idea. Like, these are really valuable things. And for me, writing used to look more like, oh, the lyrics have to be really abstract, and it's got to be super interesting, and you don't want to repeat yourself a lot. Like, there was writing from like the perspective of like old indie music from like, high school and college is very different from now. Like, so I think to answer your question, it would be like the older music would have taken me a lot longer to write. Now music takes me a lot less time to write when I sit down to write it, because I just feel like I have a much clearer focus of what I want to do, and what message I want to convey. Like, the lyrics take me a lot less time to write. I think the productions still take me quite a bit of time, and sometimes figuring out where the melodies go and all that.
Right.
But I feel like some of the best music I've written ever is over the last, like 5-6 years of my life, because I just approach it a lot differently.
Yeah.
now. And honestly, I feel like God is actually calling me back into writing more music, more so than at any other point in time in my life. So
why is that? Why do you feel that way?
I always felt like that was going to be the case. Like when I started leading worship, I remember like when I first became a Christian, I remember after about a year, I said, like, I was praying and I was like, God, I see people leading. I don't ever want to be a worship leader. I definitely said that. Like, I was like, I don't feel like I have anything to offer. And after about a year, you know, seeing people worship and really connect with God in an earnest way, I was like, okay, I know you're real. I love you and I want to follow you, but I don't feel like I have that kind of connection to you. I want to know what it really means to worship you. And then he immediately led me to Poplar Creek and then led me to a couple other ministries, Bruce City, and allowed me to serve on the teams, serve on like 3 different teams for almost 2 years, and then opened the door at Honey Creek. So like I felt like I had to sort of put some of the music that I like to write, which doesn't work as well on Sunday mornings. It's more like it's less like corporate friendly worship music. It's more music that would be something you would listen to, that would minister to you personally in a narrower way. It wouldn't be something that as many people could sing as easily lyrically. So okay. I felt like he said, okay, you know, like this is a thing. It's still happening, but it's kind of going to go in the background, and leading worship in a corporate setting in a church is going to go to the foreground. I want you to understand this and the value of it. And I understand the value of it. It's this beautiful thing. You've got like hundreds of churches, thousands of churches all over the world singing these songs together on Sunday morning, these simple songs that everybody can sing, whether they're like 9 years old or they're 90 years old. And that's like such a beautiful thing to me. Like these songs that work in all these different people's voices. I didn't used to get that. It used to be like, why are these songs so simple? Some of them are boring. Like it, you know, like they didn't seem artistically interesting to me, but that's such like a small way to look at it. It's like, no, these songs are meant to serve. They're meant to be a vehicle for everybody to get in, to go to the throne room. It's not meant to be this like artistic picture that you look at and admire. It's meant to be a participatory piece of art that we all, you know, ride to the presence essentially. So
what you're saying is you had to learn and get past like your pride of thinking, you know, all these songs are boring and they're not, they're just all the same, and they're not creative enough or they're not artistic enough. People think that same way towards churches in general, just like the whole, let's get back to the book of Acts kind of living, which is, I'm all for that. But like so much so that people will start to hate the way that church is done without having a humble heart and love for how God is working in that environment and that atmosphere with the corporate church and the church building and the 501c3. What is that? What it is? Yeah. Like I had to get past that and understand like how beautiful it is, really how God is working in the corporate church and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a connection there, I guess.
That's an interesting point too. Like that, or just like bringing up the fact that like, I think there's times when God is highlighting like, yeah, this is a flaw, this is a problem. And he's like, I want you to help confront this. Or there, like, I think a lot of times that's more of a cop out than anything to like allow that jadedness to just like push you away from the church, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I know I've felt it before, and I'll like, honestly, I have to check my heart on that on a semi-regular basis, because it's like,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, you're just like, okay, yeah, it's like, yeah, but this is your church. This is my family. This is like, okay, God, what can I do? What can I do to help? You know, and it's like, how can I help this issue? It's like, usually if God is highlighting a flaw, it's for you to pray for that.
Right. If he's given you the wisdom to see it, then like it's our responsibility to have the right heart about it and not look down, but with humility and love, pray for them and not just, I'm out of here. Totally. This is bullcrap or whatever.
100%.
Like how Paul would kind of always talk to the groups of people that he wrote into it in his letters, like they're his children basically. And it's like, you wouldn't just abandon your children just because they're less mature than you.
Yeah.
Or if you see yourself as more mature, than them, that's immaturity in itself, to view them in that way. And it's like, it's just humility to love the church still, even in their flaws, or things that you wish that people would understand that don't seem to understand. Just not looking down, I guess, on people who may be not as far along on their journey as you.
Like, it's interesting because as you're saying this, like, I'm thinking of it from being the person who people are seeing the flaw in, because I've been in a leadership position.
Okay.
It's like, it's like,
spotlight's on you.
Like, I think I said this earlier, but like, I've been music directing at Honey Creek for a while. So I've been doing like worship leading and music directing. So this seems a little off topic, but it's not. I remember going rock climbing with my sister and my niece, and like watching someone on the wall and being like, oh no, they just got to do that, and that. Cause it looks so easy from like the ground. It looks so clear because you've got that like perspective. But then when you're up there, it's like, you're like, I don't know what to do right now. Like, it doesn't seem nearly as clear when you're actually doing it. And I think that's what leadership feels like, because there's a lot of times for me where I just have to accept that, yeah, dude, you missed it. You missed it on that. You were wrong about that, or you have not been doing this well. You have not been engaged well. You've not been listening to your team well. You've been too concerned with how things are coming across, and not concerned enough with really spending that time in prayer and making sure that God is pleased with the direction you're headed. You've been too focused on what other people think, or you haven't been praying for or checking with your team enough. You've been, like there's various, I'm kind of jumping around a lot, but there's like so many times when I feel that exact way that we're talking that people feel towards the church. I feel that way about myself and my own leadership. That's definitely fully changed my perspective on the way. Like, I used to judge worship leaders and worship music, modern worship music. I used to judge all of it so hard when I first became a believer. And now I do not do that at all. Like, I have a very, very different perspective because I've been up on the wall a few times. So now I'm like, yeah, I get it. So,
yeah, kind of like what you're saying. Like, I'm in the same, and just like having trouble comparing myself, or having trouble not comparing myself to people, both ways. So it's pride or insecurity. It's like feeling insecure because you see people who are farther along in their spiritual journey. And then that same, like, it comes from the same root. So it's like the other side of that is viewing people, looking down on people for not being as far along as you think that they should be, which is kind of ridiculous.
How much recording have you done?
I did 3 like acoustic songs, I think, like before COVID, and then 22 I did 3 more, and then I think I just have 9 songs, or maybe 10. Yeah, I think I have 10 recordings out there. Cool. But I just my latest ones are just the 3 songs.
Did you put it out?
Yeah, it's on SoundCloud.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'm gonna go check that out. I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah.
Nice. What were the titles, if you don't mind me asking?
The titles of the songs?
Yeah.
Well Watered Garden was probably the best one from my last
It's a cool
EP.
title.
Yeah, it's taken from Isaiah 58, I think.
What's it about?
It's taken a lot from, like, it's a lot about my marriage, but it's a lot about, like, my life, or my marriage, but my family life. It was about like I'm dry without you, God. I'm
Yeah.
in a desert needing, water. Can't do this without you. It was just kind of like a really simple type
Concept,
of a thing
yeah.
like that. The other songs were Prisoner of Grace, and then like lightning, and then
Like Lightning?
like
Oh,
lightning,
that's a cool title.
and
I like
then
that.
the EP name was My Everlasting, and then
Nice.
this latest one I did was called The End, with the panic and the promise in parentheses. It's called The End because it's the end of the flesh, of the self, is the beginning of life, like true life, laying down your carnal man. So and it's also about the end of time, the end of everything on earth, when Jesus comes back and destroys everything with fire, whatever the timeline is, and then sets up his kingdom.
Do you think about that a lot?
I do think about that a lot, and I've been thinking about it more in the past couple of years. It's really helped me to put everything into perspective. Like, dude, that hope is just the hope, like the main hope to look for.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like, dude,
This
like,
is just a test run.
yeah. The past two years or so have been really, really difficult for me. A lot of crazy trials. So that aspect of Scripture has really helped me. Which it's just like it's everything, but it's like, why don't we think about that? Why don't we think about that more being the main hope of everything? It's like, it's not just like, yeah, we're gonna die soon and we get to go to heaven. The end is Jesus is living with us on this earth, in with his kingdom, and we're gonna be just in his presence all day.
But we're going to be new too. Like, we're not going to be broken like we are. It's like we all have that ideal version of ourselves in our head. And that's like, I think God leaves that there because he wants us to have that longing and understanding that, gosh, I'm forgetting the scripture about, like clay vessels. Is it, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we're not, we aren't what we're meant to be. We aren't what we were originally created to be, and we aren't what we're going to be. And he like leaves that longing in our heart, which is like, I think a really good thing, because like, so I personally, I think the way we'll look at our time on earth now, when we are in eternity and in the new earth, like just when we're where we're supposed to be, when we're home, I think we'll look at it kind of the way we look at our childhood. Like, we remember our childhood, but we also recognize that, wow, everything was so small when I was a child. Like, I didn't, my capacity for understanding what really matters and what's important, it was just limited. There's no way. And there's moments when you're a child where you have revelation and where you understand things, and where, everyone has strengths, so you excel at certain things and all that. But like, I think that's how we'll look at our whole life on earth, because I don't think, and maybe there's certain things we won't remember, but I don't think it'll actually be like we don't remember. I think we'll just have such perfect perspective on even the hardest and most messed up things that we did and that other people did to us. Like, we'll just look at it with perfect understanding the way that God does. And it'll just be this big, all of it's going to be so small in comparison to what we're meant to do. Do you ever watch that? You ever seen that movie Limitless before?
Yeah. Like it.
I love that movie. And I think like a lot of people like that movie because it's like calls that to that like part of us that knows that we are like a fraction of what we're meant to be.
Yeah.
And like, but that's like a Hollywood version of it, but I think we'll operate in such a clear and perfect way. And that's so exciting. Just imagine that, a kingdom of unbroken people, like just with Jesus, with the The only person I'm comfortable with being in complete control.
Just to have tastes of his presence and just who he is right now on this earth in little like glimpses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But to have that in its fullness, like scripture says, we see through a glass darkly, or a glass mirror dimly, or something like that. But just to experience him in his fullness later, what you said about like looking back on our time on earth in our old lives would be like, like an adult looking back to their childhood. There's this guy that was talking about something similar in a podcast I listened to, where he basically was talking about how the sperm has no idea like what it will be, but what the sperm will be is, like
a full-grown human.
Yeah.
Like
so
the seed of the plant has.
It's like that contrast is like maybe close to what, like Paul says, how stars differ in their body, like the bodies of space.
Yeah.
Differ in glory. 1 Corinthians 15. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Have you ever read? So I read this book. So like I've experienced a decent amount of loss in my life from a younger age, just from my family. Lost a couple of brothers, lost my dad, all my grandparents, cousin, friend. Like, so there's been like a higher rate of loss than just average. Obviously, I know everybody goes through stuff, so I'm not like saying it for that purpose. But the reason I'm saying it is because it like has driven me to research life after death testimonies and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Though obviously you have to be like careful with that, because you have to be led by the Spirit.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to just believe everything you read or hear about that. But I read a book recently called Heaven Imagined, and it's really good. It was inspired by 90 Minutes in Heaven, Don Piper, the guy who he got hit by a semi and was dead, and a pastor prayed for him, and he basically was missing like a chunk of bone from his femur. Basically, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was missing a section of his femur, so they had to put this thing on him, and it was like this very long, just months and months of every day they'd come in and they'd have to tighten it, and it was just excruciating pain after he experienced heaven for 90 minutes. And I mean, I read that story first because it was just super interesting. But one of the interesting things about it is he said he couldn't describe the colors that he saw when he got back. He couldn't describe certain things because we don't have vocabulary.
When he got back?
When he got back from heaven, like when he came back to his body.
Oh, he couldn't describe the colors
the
that
stuff
he saw there.
Yeah, the stuff that he saw there. But
Yeah.
they said the one thing that was kind of similar was the music. He could still hear some of the music he heard in heaven, even though it was he said he was hearing hundreds of songs playing at once, and they were all working together, and some of them he recognized, some of them he didn't, which that made sense to me. And it's that was kind of that was the thing that stood out to me the most. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, God gave us music because it's kind of this connection to, which makes sense. It's this connection to something that's greater than where we are now, because when you think about music, it can go over your walls. You can be emotionally affected by a song without even having the option. You just are emotionally, it just goes right past your brain, right to your heart,
Yeah. Which is crazy when you think about the music from the Kingdom of Darkness.
Yeah.
And the lyrics that are connected, associated in that context of the music that's written with it.
I wondered about that when I first became a believer, because I was like, okay, I really love a lot of music, and I get a lot out of different music,
right?
Even secular music,
creatively.
Yeah. And I remember just being like, God, where is the line? I don't understand where the line is. And then he kind of helped me to look at it like a diet. It's like there are times when it's okay to have pie. There are times when it's okay to have Sour Patch Kids. There is times, but if you are constantly ingesting that spiritually, it makes you weak. It's not, you need to be ingesting spiritually healthy media in general, and that counts for music, and that was like a super healthy, helpful way that he helped me to look at it, because then it wasn't like, it allowed me to like, all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. So it helped me to really see it clearly, because there's times where,
and not give you a law.
Exactly. Because there isn't something in scripture about it, even though I know the conviction is naturally going to be different for different people. Like for me, I think actually my conviction with it in the beginning was harder. Like it was a harder conviction because of the fact that music was so closely tied to everything in my life. So I had to be more careful with it. Mm-hmm. Now I feel a little bit less like, I feel I have a little bit more liberty with it, because music is less of it was more of an idol in my life when I first became a believer. It has less influence on me across the board than it used to.
I agree. I have a similar experience with that.
Did you have that, like where you felt like it was a bit of an idol for you?
Same thing with movies too.
Okay.
Like very, very into movies, but now they don't hold that same place, and they don't hold that much weight, like in my heart. Like, I've seen, like, I'm just a movie guy. Like I still am.
What are some of your favorite movies, if you don't mind me asking?
Sorry,
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just curious.
No, that's good.
Just pick 10. Pick 10 movies that you really like.
The Truman Show is kind of, I think it's up there, because I remember seeing that as a kid, and like the scene where you've seen it?
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
Okay, he's out on the boat, and then his boat suddenly crashes into the side of the huge structure, and then he escapes. And it's so like metaphorical too, for waking up, just like waking up and exiting this place of like bondage that you were in, or exiting this old life that you were limited in, and now everything is opened up to you. I think it would be hard to narrow down like to certain movies, but I like certain movies just pop up in my head. It's like
like movies.
Book of Eli is.
I've never seen. Oh, is that with Denzel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like a lot of different types of movies, but I think probably like I've sorted out. I think one of the best movies ever made is Shawshank Redemption.
Okay.
I judge movies if I come back to them after long periods of time and watch them, and I still like them, or I like them more. So that's how I judge like what my top 10 movies. And then obviously I'm thinking of it like acting, directing, cinematography, and I love Shawshank because it really will age very well, because it takes place in an older time. There's no CG. The acting and the writing's incredible. The story is great. So there's no CG that'll get cheesy with time. It'll always feel appropriate. Whatever's in the movie will feel appropriate because it's meant to take place in a specific time. So it won't be like, oh, that car looks old. They'll be like, no, that car looks appropriate for the movie. And good stories do not go out, as we know from the fact that we literally base our lives off a book of stories, like that do not expire. So I think Castaway, I love the Back to the Future trilogy.
Yeah, Back to the Future,
I just recently watched that, and I was like, oh, it's still good. I mean, it's a little cheesy. It has to be.
It's so awesome.
But it's so
hoverboards.
Cool. The hoverboard.
That was so sweet. That was so sick. Watching that for the first time.
Yeah, dude.
I think I had dreams like when I was on
Really?
on a hoverboard. Of course I did. Also, like being Spider-Man in my sleep.
Oh,
in my dreams.
Dude, Spider-Man.
I think I had a dream once where I was Neo flying over the water.
That was you in the dream?
That was me in the dream.
Do you fly in your dreams regularly?
Well, that was just me as Neo.
But does Daniel fly in his dreams?
I don't remember the last time I flew in my dreams. But do you fly in your dreams?
Yeah, a lot.
Really?
Yeah, and I find if I'm doing well, I fly easier.
Oh, wow. If you're doing well in life?
If I'm doing well in life, especially like spiritually, I fly easier in my dreams. but when I'm not doing well or I'm really stressed out, it's harder for me to fly in my dreams. It doesn't happen all the time.
That might mean something.
It definitely has to have some sort of like it's an indicator.
It's at least psychological.
It's at least psychological.
But I think there's more to it than that.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's always something I've noticed about.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Do you know you're dreaming in your dreams usually?
Sometimes I do. No, yeah, you were talking about this now. It just feels manufactured, like so fake.
It totally does.
You were talking about The Chosen.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's good you bring that up. Yeah. We totally didn't just cut the cameras and restart from that.
No, this is real.
It's super
real time,
super real, authentic, and totally. Oh, speaking of that, real quick here, cheers.
Oh yeah.
Cheers. We didn't do it. We gotta do it.
Why do we gotta cheers?
I don't know. Just because it's fun,
Just for it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna even. What happens if you cheers and don't drink?
I'm pretty sure all of your skin falls off.
Almost didn't do it.
I know, that would have been really messy, dude.
So yeah.
So on
I'll
that
just say
note,
the same thing that I said last time. I like it. I really like it. A lot of people have an issue with it, but I don't.
Yeah.
And then what did you say?
No, I think a lot of people have an issue with it because they're so like jaded from stuff either being super inaccurate and heretical or kind of cheesy. It's like a lot of Christian movies have went either of those directions for a lot of reasons, but like I feel like The Chosen, well, that's one of the good things about what we were talking about with the gatekeeping is there's less gatekeeping now. So like Hollywood is not fully deciding every single person that gets something through. Like The Chosen happened completely outside of Hollywood. It was all crowdfunded. And so Dallas Jenkins has like so much control over what's happening. And it's so evident that he really loves God and wants to convey scripture in a way that is accurate and well done and like has that balance. And that's just so evident with it. And I think that's why one of the reasons it's so powerful, because it's like, even though it's obviously he's super upfront, hey, this isn't 100% scriptural. Like this is, I think he said like, if it's possible that it could have happened this way, we're open to doing it. Like as far as filling in the gaps that aren't actually in scripture. But I remember for me, the point, because when I first watched it, I was like, okay, is this going to be like another one of those heretical things, or because it's not cheesy, but is this going to be heretical?
Right.
It's going to bum me out because I'm kind of liking it. But I remember for me, the first moment where I decided that it was good was when it was like all the disciples in the show were, one of them started saying a psalm and then all of them started saying a psalm.
Okay. Yeah.
And it all of a sudden occurred to me. I was like, whoa, the popular culture in Jewish culture was the Bible. Like the people in the Bible were operating from such a different worldview than what it's like
their education.
Yeah, that was their pop culture. Like we were talking about movies earlier as like those are things that everyone can reference in American pop culture, but in pop culture, like pop culture in Jewish culture back then was like the Bible. That's where they referenced everything, Psalms. And it like I remember when that happened, it all of a sudden occurred to me. I don't know why in that moment, but it occurred to me like, whoa. So when Saul became Paul, but they still knew him as Saul, like terrorizing the church, it would have in their mind immediately hearkened back to Saul pursuing and terrorizing David. So it would have probably struck some deeper fear into their heart at that point. And
interesting.
That had never occurred to me. Like, and it wasn't even part of the show, but it like fully reframed the way that I looked at the Bible of like, whoa, the culture was so different. Like they were operating from such a biblical worldview in reference to the Old Testament with everything that was happening. And it like, for me, I was like, oh, like I was just very deeply spiritually edified by this show. And then after that, there was many times the Holy Spirit like convicted me, or even just the concept of like the fact that the Jewish people were waiting for a great military leader. I never thought of that before in the same way until after watching the show, being like, oh, wow, no wonder so many people missed it, because they thought that it was going to be more like David, So
right.
So
Have
to
you
me,
finished the
yeah,
4th season? Yeah.
I'm all the way caught up on it, and like, yeah, dude, I pray a lot for like the people who are behind that show, because it's like it's got such huge potential to reach people, and like there's got to be increasingly more temptation to, like the excellence is obviously there, the funding's obviously there, so now the temptation is going to probably go. It's like Satan can tempt you when you have nothing and when you have everything easier than when you're kind of in the middle,
just getting by or something.
Yeah. It's like the temptation of abusing abundance is, as hard as being cynical and hard-hearted and discouraged and hopeless, like the temptation to fall into that when you have nothing, So I think, and right now that show has an abundance of resource, so it would be really easy for them to go off track. It'd be really easy for, Dallas Jenkins and the other creators to go off track in it. So I definitely like pray for that ministry. Yeah. And also it's got to get discouraging to just get so much heat all the time. Right.
That's something that I don't really do, is like pray for people that I don't know as much.
Yeah.
And like, it really makes sense to do that, because you're not only benefiting from what they're providing for you spiritually, but a lot of other people. And yeah, so I mean, because I guess it just often feels like, yeah, they're good, but it is important to pray for other people. It seems kind of obvious, but
no, but you're right. You don't think of it with, especially people on TV or movies, because we think of them differently. Yeah. Because it's literally 2-dimensional, you know. But like, so I went out to California, and specifically to Hollywood last May. I've got some friends who are out there, and they're part of this thing called some really, really dear friends of mine, and part of the Hollywood Prayer Network. And I was there for like a couple of their events, and it like blew my mind. They're like, yeah, we want to pray for the people in Hollywood, because that's one of the largest mouthpieces to the whole world. Like it injects ideology into the entire world. And that concept, just like, I was like, oh yeah, like, gosh, we really like think of Hollywood in a certain way as Christians, but like they need all kinds of prayer out there. And I think the second thing that struck me was the fact that there's so many more Christians, genuine, solid Christians in Hollywood, in California and in LA, but specifically in Hollywood, than I ever realized. I was shocked by it. And it was just, I don't know, it was really eye-opening to be like, sometimes we just like think of certain areas like, well, yeah, that place is toast. Like, but it's like God cares about what's going on out there just as much as he cares about any other spot. Yeah.
I think it takes maybe greater faith to be able to have that perspective, maybe because it just takes faith to pray for other people. So
yeah, it does. Absolutely.
What's your favorite, what's one of your favorite moments or episodes in The Chosen?
In The Chosen? I think when he, the guy who was paralyzed, or who was paraplegic for 38 years, when he has him get up and walk, that whole episode is incredible. When he helps the woman with the issue of blood, that was another incredible moment. And I would have to say, anytime he's thinking of his father and kind of dealing with the loss of not having his father there, and realizing that, like when he's standing at his father's tomb, realizing, hey, I'm not coming back here. Like, this is the last time I'm going to be at my dad's tomb. And because next time, I'm not coming back here because I got other business to take care of. Yeah. I think it's just intense. Like, that specifically kind of made me, one of the reasons why it's my favorite is because it made me have such it sounds obvious to say, but an even deeper, more realistic respect for Jesus, knowing that he was carrying the weight of knowing this really intense thing he had to do. It was coming up. It had to happen. But he had to manage other people, lead other people, carry a ministry while he's carrying the weight of this really intense thing that's coming up. And he did not have an earthly father to turn to. He just had, I shouldn't say he just had his heavenly father, but he didn't have that tangible father presence anymore in his life at that point in time. I guess it's hard to tell, but it seems to be pretty clear that
from the silence of it,
that his dad wasn't around during, his dad had passed away before he was, in full-fledged ministry.
Which I kind of like how The Chosen did that too, because it's ambiguous as to what happened to Joseph. So
exactly, I think that's great.
Yeah, I like.
What about you? What's your? I was gonna ask.
Was that your 3?
Yeah, those are my 3.
This is just in the last season, just the moment where he's watching the 2 women and Zebedee, is it? Crush the grapes.
Dude.
And with the wine, with the grape juice coming out.
Yeah.
And him watching that and wincing or whatever.
Was it grape juice or was it olive oil?
It was. It was the grape juice, I think, because
I thought it was olive oil, because they have the olive oil business.
Yeah. I feel like maybe they were making wine, but I'm not positive now. But they had Zebedee had that huge rock with the rope around it or whatever, and it was, so I thought it was.
Maybe you're right.
I thought it was grape juice because of that.
Yeah,
that would make more sense. But anyway,
well, it was one of the 2. Yeah, either way, it was one of the 2.
Yeah. Anyway, just him knowing that he had to be crushed with it, for his, blood to be poured out and for salvation. But just that moment. And I think this other one was in the last season 3, where he was in the synagogue teaching with when he went back to visit Lazarus and Mary and Martha.
Yeah.
And he starts talking about Ezekiel, who went to the widow to but just basically telling them that they're missing it.
Yeah.
And he says, if you don't, what does he say? Something like, I can't save you. He says, I can't save you because if you don't see these things, man, I can't remember what it was, but that was a really good moment. The Pharisees he comes up to him. He's like, if you do not take back what you said, we will have no option, no other choice but to fulfill the law of Moses. And he says, I am the law of Moses. He steps towards him and he says, I am the law of Moses. And then they take him out to the edge of the hill and they're going to toss him. And then he just
walks through the crowd.
Through them.
That's the same episode that he goes to his dad's tomb.
Oh, is it?
Okay. That's where he goes. He goes right to his dad's tomb after that. But that's that in that episode. He's talking about how they need to be forgiven of their sins. They need to be healed and set free spiritually. Yeah. And then they say, show us a sign. And he's like, they basically say, why would you deny your people a sign and go to the Gentiles? I believe it's something like that. And then he brings up the reference of Ezekiel. Is it Ezekiel? No, not Ezekiel.
I don't know if it's Ezekiel.
It's Elisha. It was Elisha who went to, and he saved the Gentile woman by filling her jars with oil. So I think is that when he referenced that? Sometimes it's hard to tell because there's so many good moments.
That's when he references
but then he basically says if you don't see your need for being saved, I can't save you. And that's what it was. They just didn't. Gosh, it's
like the feeling's still there, but I totally butchered it.
Yeah, that's all right. We filled it in.
Is it butchered or butched?
Butchered.
It's not butched, is that?
I don't think it's butched. That's like a haircut. A butch. Like
Butched is a haircut,
butch.
or is that's bad? Say butch.
I don't know.
I think it's bad to say butch.
I think it might be. I don't know.
I think that's lesbians, isn't that?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I'll cut that out.
I think that's like how you describe like a girl with a haircut that looks like a guy.
Yeah. That's why you thought it was a haircut.
Yeah.
Because
But butchered is definitely like a more because you're
that's
cutting
what
it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I butchered it. But anyway, some people say, like my brother-in-law says, like I put a lot of just a lot of work into stuff like that, like the details or whatever. But
You definitely do.
well, I was gonna say that you do a lot more. Maybe it's just in specific things. Maybe it's in different things or whatever.
Yeah,
but,
probably.
But you definitely do. Like I've seen it today. So I mean, it just encourages me to do that too, and not to have that attitude like it's good enough or this'll be fine. But also not to be a perfectionist. Because there's a line, I think.
I cross the line way too much. I'm like really learning that about myself and trying super hard to figure out like a healthier way to do it, because I realized for me, like, perfectionism is tied up. It's me putting the value of my identity and me as a person into my art.
Okay.
So then it has to be a certain level. Otherwise, what does that say about my identity as a person? And that's like not how God wants me to look at it at all. So it's like finding a line for me, and I'm definitely getting better at it for sure. That's been one of the greatest things about being a music director and a worship leader is Sunday comes every week. So you just only get to be so much of a perfectionist. Yeah. So definitely trying to do that in other areas.
It's limiting your perfectionism or whatever.
For sure, because if you have something perfect, but you never put it out, or you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you'd rather have something that's like an A- or a B+ that actually gets out and ministers to people, and God
forcing you to put it out there.
Yeah. So I'm learning that a lot about myself, and it's like, so it's definitely something that's going to take some time for me to fully sort through. But it's like,
really tough to set deadlines for stuff when you're like that, because you don't even work on it at all or much at all, because you're like, man, like I don't know, you just get stuck. Like I'm talking about myself too.
Yeah, for sure.
The accountability with other people is nice, and like doing projects with other people is also helpful too, because then you learn about yourself more by doing that, by working with other people. But then also, like, you're also accountable to, like, you're like, oh wow, I'm probably too much right now or something. Yeah, like earlier. But I'm talking about myself. I'm not.
I know. But earlier, like that was
sure.
like, oh yeah, totally. And it was so easy for me to hear that, because I was like, oh yeah, yep, no, that's right.
Right. Because you recognize it in yourself. It's not the first time you heard that.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're like, oh dude, okay, I gotta learn that this is my tendency.
Yeah. That's like an aspect of, like, openness or honesty that I want to have more in my relationships with people, being free to say those types of things and not be like, oh, so tense around people where you can't. And I guess it's like, it does depend on the type of relationship you have with the person, but
also depends on the tone too.
It does, yeah. Which I said it in like a maybe facetious way or something.
It was jokey. It sounded like jokey. It was like jokey, but it was like, this is real, but also I'm not like that mad about it, but it was jokey. Yeah. So like that helps. We're doing a worship night at Honey Creek, and so we were doing reels, and there was just a couple times where, like Zuli, super. I love Zuli. She's awesome. We've been leading together for a long time, and she's just super talented in a ton of ways. And a couple of times where she was just like, no, I think that's good, or no, we got to move on to this. And like, it was just really easy for me to be like, yep, she's like, this is helping me know where my perfectionism limit is for this. There's other things that I do where I'm like, no, this has to be really, really good. Like that video. Like even though I definitely hit my limit with that. But there was plenty of times in the process of doing that where I heard, no, it's good enough. You just put it out. You just put it out. And I'm super glad that I did not listen on certain moments. And I allowed myself to push further. I wish I would have done it quicker, or I wouldn't have allowed brokenness to get in the way, whether that's laziness, anxiety, over perfectionism on certain little things, like just not being healthy with, managing my time properly, or managing my spiritual life, or my mental health, right? And therefore it's affecting my ability to get to work and to be efficient, like all that, like there's definitely brokenness that gets in the way of getting something done quicker. But I am glad that I took it to a certain point of excellence, because when I watch it now, I know, like, yeah, this is the best I can do. I can't do any better on this specific project. Then
that's a good feeling. It
is a good feeling. And it's like, it's a really, for that particular project, it's something that's like it's very close to my heart. It's a representation of me putting everything that I can into one thing. Like, not that I'm putting all my chickens in, no, all my eggs into one, chickens into one basket, all my eggs into one basket. But, it's just cool to be like, okay, everything I know how to do creatively, spiritually, like from music to editing to directing to writing, to just having faith to do something that crazy. Like it's all in one place. And it's just cool to see that, to be like, yeah, like this is a measure of where God has taken me with all this stuff. So
that's really good to hear. The heart behind creative projects, because if I just see that video, I'm not going to get that.
No,
I'm not going to get that from the video.
Poplar has been like, that was like where I really began to learn what worship actually was, and how to learn, like how to worship, and like learned so much from like Tiffany and Chad, and yeah, it was just such a important place. So it's just going to be really cool. Like there was times where I was borrowing a laptop to work on a different project there, and I would bring it back late at night. And I remember there's been specific times where I would go and I would just pray and worship in that gym and sanctuary with that vision of this video in my mind, like knowing that I wanted to do this well before I had shot anything.
This video?
Yeah. So it's going to be
how many years ago?
Years ago. This song is extremely old, and this idea is extremely old.
Wow.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's like, this is something I've been working on for a very, very long time. And ironically, the song, it's called Who's Above, and it's about discovering the identity of, discovering my identity as a son of my Father in heaven. Like, I am one of his kids. I am one of his sons, one of his many sons. He's got, you're one of his kids. Like, discovering that is the core of my identity, and realizing that that's like the reason why he's making so many people. We are his family. That is like his heart behind it. He has the heart of a father, and not just, an all powerful God. Like, that's not, there's so many facets to him. And one of them is his identity as a father, and discovering that, and the way that affected the way that I looked at God. And that came out of a season where I actually did a project when I first became a believer. I did a album. It was called the Andrew EP, and I put my everything into it. And I was much less mature as a Christian, and definitely idolized, music, was idolizing music, and didn't have my priorities straight as much. And it kind of fell apart at the end. Like, the mastering part of it went really wrong. Everything else was great, but the mastering got messed up. and it like burned me out and broke my heart and discouraged me. And I really started to question God's heart and what his motive was. Was he just toying with me? Did he actually care about people? It was really dark, like super, super dark. And I came out of that season. When I came out of that season, it was through recognizing that God had the heart of a father towards me. And that is where the song came from. Like the chorus, the lyrics are, "You are my father, I am your son. This was the plan when things begun. And it must be true what they say about you. Love never fails when it starts with you." It's a really simple chorus, but that was like the core of what brought me out of this season of like, okay, I know you're God. I know you're all powerful, but I don't know if I can trust you. And I don't know, maybe the other guy was right. Like that, it got that dark at certain points where I started entertaining.
The other guy was right?
Satan, maybe he was right to rebel against you. Like it got that dark because I just didn't know if I could trust this creator. Why are you creating all these people? Why did you allow me to be born into the middle of this broken place in this spiritual war? Like what is, and it was God really just being like, no, I'm a father to you. And I love you. I know you don't understand why all this is happening. I know you don't understand so much of this, but you just trust me. And he just showed me again and again how good he was and how trustworthy he was. And so that's where that song came out of. So it's just cool that like the brokenness started from a really failed attempt at a creative endeavor musically. The song was born out of the redemption of that process.
Yeah, that's
and it's way more than
really
music.
cool.
It's way more than a song. It's like the redemption of my identity, essentially. And my identity as like the son of like the king of the universe. That's so much more powerful than any video or anything creatively, any chords. Ultimately all that stuff is pretty small in comparison to that core like message and that core redemptive aspect of it. So I'm super grateful, and I'm really excited about sharing that with people. So
when people are going through it, that tends to be the thing that they go to, just simply like distrust in God.
Totally.
And thinking that he's toying with you.
Yeah.
Or just having all these questions. I have a lyric in the song that I just wrote. Sometimes questions remain even if they're explained, because
that's good.
We know the answers, we have the theology, but because of how we're feeling, we start asking all these questions basically out of emotional response.
Yeah.
How women is like very emotional beings, and they relate to people more through. They have conversations with people and they connect with people more emotionally based rather than like logic and facts, I guess, would be, at least for me. So it's like,
I definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I relate to that like aspect because I think I sometimes operate more that way than maybe a lot of guys.
Emotionally?
Yeah, which is really annoying because like I'm definitely still a dude, so there's like the other half of me that's like, dude, stop, knock this off. Also, we're gonna totally get canceled for talking about this.
That's okay. Man, dude, I think we'll probably get like maybe 2 views. So
nice.
We're not gonna get canceled.
We will get canceled by one of them.
That's fine with me.
Yeah. No, this is I know what you're saying.
But yeah, I think I connect with people emotionally, like probably more emotionally than most guys do too. But I think
you're an artist too, so you're an artist, so that makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, just like how women like will converse with people out of their emotions, and it kind of like does go against logic, but it's like, I don't know how to put it, but there's a connection there. There's a similarity there with like how we respond in general to God with questions and stuff. Like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Like just general questions like that maybe, or are you toying with me? It's like, well, we know God is good.
Yeah.
But like, do we feel it at this time of our suffering? probably, I mean, no, like we don't always feel that.
To know, like when you're, let's go back to the rock climbing analogy. Like the only way to know that, like, you know, those automatic ropes when you're rock climbing. So like they're like automatic ropes that like you hook onto and you climb up the wall. But then when you lean back to fall off the wall, it'll for a second it doesn't catch you, and then all of a sudden it catches, and then it slowly lowers.
Oh, okay.
And it's like it's like those, you know, we ask those emotional questions because we can't feel the rope like holding us up. You almost have to like go through those times where you kind of are falling or failing, or, you know, you're not holding yourself against the wall to realize that he's got you. You know, like you can read it, but you don't know it until you actually go through it, right. You know? And that's the same thing with, you know, like just being on that wall. Like you don't know for sure. I remember the first time I like climbed one of those, and I was like, is this thing really going to catch me if I just lean back and fall off this wall? And I was very skeptical. I mean, even though I'm like, obviously it's going to, like, they're not going to, like, you know, they're not trying to like murder people.
Yeah.
At Adventure Rock. Like,
yeah.
But it's hard to like, it's like you don't, I think that's one of the reasons why God allows us to go through a lot of things to really like prove his character. You don't
experience the truth of
yeah, exactly. Exactly. The analogy of like a fire, it's something that I often use, is like, it's like when we first become believers, our faith is like a bonfire. It's like really big and super exciting. It's like a bonfire of just like leaves. It's really big and super like hype and super exciting, but there's no depth, there's no coals. But like over time, we hunk off big pieces of our time, big sacrifices of our time, big sacrifices of our finances, of our faith, whatever it is. We throw that in the fire, burns down. We do that again and again and again. And eventually, rather than this like shallow, really big, bright, exciting bonfire of like dried leaves, you've got this deep bed of coals that like may look a little less exciting at certain times, but it's so, if you've ever tried to put out a deep bed of coals, it is very hard. Like if you have a fire with deep bed of coals from sacrificing all this wood on this fire, all these chunks of time, all these, like it is, you can rain on that thing and it'll still not completely go out. Like it's very, very hard to put it out. And that's like the difference. That's the difference between, you know, the beginning of that story, like talking about when I was making that other project, right, where my faith was, is I hadn't thrown all that stuff on the fire. I hadn't like sacrificed all that time and that prayer and put all that into it. Not that it's like me doing it in my own strength, but I didn't have that bed of coals, that bed of experience that's like much harder to put out. Because now, like even this morning I woke up and I was like, my mind was just racing. I had all these thoughts. I gotta get this done. God, am I doing this right? Like all these things. And so quickly is like, no, like, remember all that other stuff? Yeah. Remember all that other stuff? Okay. Do what you know is right. Go to the Psalms, start reading, start praying. And immediately, like it takes so much less time to turn back to him from your anxiety, from your temptation, from your failings. It's just so much more automatic. It doesn't take months and months like it used to when I first became a believer. So
yeah, you have a lot more to go off of now. Way
more to go off of. It's so much harder to put out that fire too, because there's just so many layers of his faithfulness, you know? So you just don't have, I mean, I suppose you could choose to, you could be like a super hip deconstructionist.
Nice.
That stuff drives me nuts sometimes. I'm just like, man.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's like, it's fine if you want to, I know you got to ask hard questions. I get it. But like, I think you just want an excuse to do what you want to do. And you're just trying to use your intellect to get there.
Yeah. I don't know.
It drives me nuts.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
What are 3 main priorities in your day?
In my day?
Yeah.
now, 3 main priorities. Definitely the word and prayer, which I am very tempted when I'm busy to not put as much true focus into it. And that's not good. That's something I'm definitely working on. Yeah, it's a no. Yeah. Yeah. But that's definitely the top priority. Eating a really good meal.
Really?
Yeah,
that's up there in the 3 priorities.
It's in, yeah, because
Nice,
my
okay.
brain just works. I just do better if
What about when you're fasting?
Well, yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Oh,
when I'm
okay.
fasting. Yeah. When I'm fasting, then spending extra time in prayer. But no, but I think that, and for when I'm fasting, especially, would be going to the sauna at the gym and reading in the sauna. That's like a thing that I've been doing, and I do it almost every night now. Like almost, like 4 or 5 times a week, at least 6 times a week if I can.
Wow.
And it's like been a game changer for me because it just helps me to de-stress. It's really healthy for you. And just the reading aspect of it, I've like decided to become a reader. So I just pair this really relaxing, de-stressing thing with reading, and it gets me off my phone. So I think scripture and like reading, as well as like making sure that I either work out or I spend time like in a sauna because it's so good for you, and eating a really like high protein meal. I found recently that I do really well on like more of a carnivore diet, which is crazy because I was a vegetarian for like 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So I think those are 3 super big priorities for me. And the reason they're big priorities is because they allow me to get so much more done. Like, so
Okay.
I don't like, it's like if I do those 3 things,
Builds off from there.
I'll just have a much more productive day. So yeah.
Interesting.
What about you?
Just connecting with God in prayer and the word. And I think it would be specifically connecting with God, because if I spend time in prayer and reading of the word and it feels like it was dead, that sucks.
It does.
So I put that emphasis on connecting with God. But
I love that. That's really good. That's right on.
Just
connecting. Yeah.
Yeah, connecting rather than just the dead. But I don't know. I think connecting with people, having meaningful interactions with people is probably another one. And then third would be just doing what I need to, and this is probably out of order, but just doing what I need to do for my family, doing what I need to do, and growing in my like leadership, and which is all one thing.
You are a very earnest person. You're a very sincere person. That's probably a better way to put it. You're a very sincere person, so you crave sincerity in the world, both in that's at least my impression.
Yeah,
so you crave
accurate.
Sincerity in interactions with people, and even just your answer for connecting with God. You want a sincere connection. You like truth matters, like the actual it being a true connection with someone or a true connection with God. Yeah, truth matters to you, so you desire it's like sincerity is essentially craving truth. Like you're seeking truth in different forms, so like that's definitely something I've always noticed about you. So
cool, thanks.
That makes sense. Yeah, for sure. No,
I
I definitely mean that.
What do you think about aliens?
Ooh, nice. Yes. Here we go. All right, let me just take a sip here.
Nice.
Let me just
I say this because
what was that? The question about aliens?
let me throw it. Yeah, exactly.
On the fire.
I say this because years ago we were driving. I can't remember. Maybe back from like some event that we played music at, but you were talking about aliens in some way.
Sounds right. Sounds like me.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember what the conversation was about, but
what do I think about aliens? Okay, I think aliens are extra dimensional beings. and they are essentially demons, and it's been a very long play to build this narrative that they are these extraterrestrial beings from far away, with lots of technology. That narrative allows for someday these beings to show up and give us some information about different things about our life, such as, I don't know, maybe the Bible. A pointed way to say it would be that, I used to say, the only way that God could convince me that he's not real is if he came down and told me himself. So I think that's the reason why Satan has been crafting this narrative about what aliens are, is because it's going to be a very useful tool for some extremely potent deception. And it already has been, but I think
away from believing in God.
Because if an alien craft with a bunch of beings on it, whatever they look like, it doesn't matter if they come down and they've got all this technology and they say, hey, this is the real truth about religion. This is the real truth about where you come from. This is the real truth about that Jesus you believe in, all that. That'd be a very, very good way to deceive a lot of people. So that's what my belief about what aliens is. And I think that, I don't know. I haven't researched the concrete nature of some of these testimonies, but I've definitely heard about testimonies of people calling on the name of Jesus, right, during abductions and that kind of thing. And they respond to it. Yeah. And they respond to it in a very negative way. And they're always saying weird things about Jesus, specifically when people are experiencing these creatures. But, that's what I personally believe that they are. So it is a real thing, but it's not, extraterrestrials from far away.
Right.
It is interdimensional beings and fallen angels that are trying to craft a narrative, because it'll also, there's a lot you could do with that, but I think that it's pretty clear why that would be a really useful narrative to have crafted, and what you could do, the way you could severely direct and deceive the general public. So
yeah. Did you hear about the Miami, Florida mall?
I did hear about that. I didn't look into it. What are your thoughts? But even just in general, what are your thoughts on all of that?
First of all, for the mall thing, I just was watching videos, and you never know what to believe with testimonies, on something like TikTok or Instagram. But people who I felt like had genuine descriptions of what they saw, or they were saying that there were these teenagers basically that had this box that looked like a radio.
Yeah.
And basically that they started to see a portal open up, which they didn't. I don't know if they described it as being a portal. Mm-hmm. That's a portal. It was a portal, but what they saw was something.
It looked like that.
Yeah. So, but I looked into that. Some people, because other people were saying that they were using one of those boxes to communicate, like a radio type of a box that has a megaphone or some, I don't know, some contraption that's used in the occult or just witchcraft to communicate with the dead, which is you're just communicating with demons.
Yeah.
People who believed in this stuff, they were getting messages back. You could hear it. They were doing it in real time, communicating with these evil spirits. That's kind of my theory, I guess, that somehow they did open up a portal by just communicating with evil spirits, or just opening this up. They were messing around with this contraption, this radio box thing.
Okay. So that's what you. So yeah.
In some way, something something came out
Yeah.
in this dimension, or however you want to put it, and freaked people out, and now like nobody's mentioned anything about it. Police haven't mentioned anything about it. But I watch a lot of these kinds of things, or just videos in general. I watch a lot of YouTube and stuff. So just like part of my research, I guess, in these types of things. Not just aliens, but a bunch of stuff.
But just supernatural phenomenons.
Yeah, I mean, anything really.
Yeah.
Like it could be supernatural phenomenons.
I think that stuff is interesting. It's very like, it can be like a rabbit hole, and it can sometimes be like unhealthy to get too into it, because it doesn't like edify you spiritually to a certain point. But there's a point where it's such a powerful tool for evangelism and for recontextualizing like what matters, because you're like, wow, this is like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, if you're an unbeliever, that's the kind of stuff that's like, oh wow, the spiritual world is real. So then you want to seek answers about it. That's the stuff that ended up causing me to have interest in figuring out who God was. I mean, I thought I was doing it, but it was just God pursuing me. But like, that was the stuff that made me be like, oh wow, there is more to this life. There's, so, you know, it is. I don't think it's right to be like, oh, Christians should never get into that. It's like, no, we should look at it and filter it through the Word and filter it through the Holy Spirit and have an answer, because
growing up, there's always that.
Yeah.
It's like a fear of getting too much into it or whatever, which of course, like there you can have an unhealthy interest in it, but if because I know people who like that's their only focus or whatever. Yeah. And God is not. Yeah. Or the gospel is not, but
I think that there is a really interesting subject that's kind of adjacent to that, is just Nephilim in general.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too.
That stuff's super interesting.
Yeah.
So I remember there was a couple things in Scripture that used to confuse me. I always felt like it was super harsh that God wanted Israelites to kill everybody in the Promised Land. Right. That he wiped out the whole earth with the flood. Yeah. And that once you take the mark of the beast, it's over for you. And I remember early in my faith being like, what is this? Why is this the way it is? This seems really harsh. And I remember it almost 2 years like after I kind of asked about that, and like, you know, in prayer time, like God led me to this podcast. L.A. Marzulli, he like his ministry is to research all of this stuff from a biblical worldview, and he talks all about the Nephilim, and he refers to it as like a seed war, essentially between God and Satan. And I think that's a really good way to refer to it, because essentially, like, you know, when the fallen angels took like human wives and created the Nephilim, like that was him trying to remake humans in his image and like mess with the gene pool, because he knew that the Messiah was going to come through the gene pool. Sure, there was like quite a few reasons why he did that, but that was definitely clearly like part of the reason that happened. And then everything was super messed up, you know, in the days of Noah. So it's like, if you imagine like these large groups of like, you know, half humans, half angels, like giants running around just doing crazy stuff, it makes sense why God was like, okay, we got to, like, this is going to get out of control if I allow this to continue. So it makes sense why he would do that. It also makes sense as to why, because it even says in the book of Joshua, I love the book of Joshua, like how there was tons of giants in the land. So it makes sense that he was like, this is not, these creatures are not supposed to exist. This is really bad for so many reasons. Wow. So it makes sense why he wanted to wipe all them out there. And then my personal belief about the mark of the beast is that it'll be something that'll change human DNA to remake it more in the image of like a Nephilim or like Satan, because that's ultimately what he wants to do. I think it will be a DNA upgrade, so to speak, but not in the right way. Just like so many things with Satan, he's trying to give you these things that come from, you want them, they're natural good desires, like, you know, like a wife or, like sex. All that stuff is like good. Those are good desires, but Satan wants to give you, porn and hookup culture, like a tainted version of a good thing. So it's like we want a DNA upgrade. We want an upgrade because God is going to give that to us, and that's what we're supposed to have. We're supposed to be better than we are. And so it'll be an offer, like, you'll get this DNA upgrade, this, and this. You won't get sick. You'll live longer, whatever it'll be. And so it makes sense as to why once you take it, that's the line, because it actually changes. That's my belief about it. That's what his was.
Just simply, hey, you're gonna get this tattoo.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's my belief. That's what I suspect it's gonna be like. I mean, if I'm wrong, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, of course, obviously, I'm not.
I mean, it's interesting and it makes sense.
It does make sense.
So that's interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's super interesting. That stuff interests me quite a bit because it like recontextualizes. Because there's even so much Native American lore and mythology about giants being in the land, like in red-haired, six-fingered giants that were cannibalistic in nature. If you look back at like old articles from the 1800s, people finding like big giant skeletons, and then all of a sudden they disappear and you never see them again. Like all this, so I think that makes sense why there would be the powers of the world would not want that kind of stuff to be easily accessible and well known, because it would reinforce the biblical narrative, and it would cut against some of the modern narratives that are meant to undercut the biblical narrative. If giants are real and provable, that's 1 point for the Old Testament.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the Nephilim were in before the flood and also after.
Yeah.
What about now? Do you think that their DNA or their DNA could somehow be still here?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what that means or what. Right. I don't know what the logistics are. I do know that there was like a really interesting testimony of like the giant of Kandahar. Did you hear about that? Mm-hmm. It was in Afghanistan. It was like a team went missing up in the mountains, and then another team went up to find them, and they found like just a slaughter fest. And then they encountered this giant and basically killed it, and it got carted off, to some secret base kind of deal. Yeah. It was a story, and there was a guy who came forward, blurred face, and told the story on, I think it was one of L.A. Marzulli's podcasts, but he also went on other things and talked about it. And it was interesting because my oldest brother, he was in the military, and he's more of a conspiracy theorist. He wasn't a conspiracy theorist from like the biblical point of view. Like, I guess technically I'm, that would be one thing that I, you could describe me as. But when I told him about that, he was like, oh yeah, no, I heard about that. And he like heard about it more so from his military friends. So it was like it came from kind of a different source for him. So I think that there is a chance that they still exist in some way, but I just don't know. It's hard to know, it's hard to know what's real. And I'm always hesitant. I'm always skeptical with this stuff, even though I probably believe some things that a lot of people would think are crazy, and that are a lot crazier than a lot of people would be willing to believe. But there is a part of me that's always deeply skeptical of this stuff. But I also, because I know that I think it's a healthy thing to be with this kind of stuff, but I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it says they're going to be here and thereafter, and it also says that like the end times will be like the days of Noah. So I think that this stuff is going to be real. I think it is going to come back in some type of way, but who knows exactly what that's going to be.
Right. Yeah, we don't exactly know what that means. Like in the days of Noah, what that exactly means.
Exactly.
And I know some people have taken that as, oh, well, the Nephilim are going to be here again or something. But
which wouldn't be crazy. Wouldn't surprise me. I think they probably are. I think that
It would be crazy.
It would be crazy, and I think Satan does crazy stuff. I mean, I think he has his whole kingdom set up in different places. I think he's got access to crazy technology and all this. Like, I think that it's like, you know, like the term like the Illuminati, for example. People hear that term all the time, but like, to me, all that term is just describes Satan's kingdom and where it meets the earth, like where it goes from spiritual to real. Like, he's got principality. I mean, he's got people in high places. He's got lots of access to lots of different things. And, you know, I'm sure if he could bring that kind of thing back through whatever means, he would, because ultimately his goal is to steal, kill, and destroy. And that includes the gene pool of the humans. But I just don't know. You know, it's hard. It's hard to know what's what with that. And I look into it a little less than it was fascinating to me in the beginning, but now more and more I'm just like, God, just help me to be faithful with my life and get the things done that you're asking me to do.
More
and
important things. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I get more focused on that, even though it does, like, I still get into it every once in a while and I revisit it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's not healthy to be focused on it all the time.
Yeah.
Like, have that be one of the things that you always focus on with everything else.
There's just so much more to do.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Do you read? Are you a reader?
I found out a couple of years ago that
you read in the sauna.
Yeah, reading the sauna.
Yeah.
I just started doing that at the gym. Dude, I would love to have a house with a sauna. That's just a side note. It would just be awesome to just be able to do that every day. But I think
I would love that for you.
Dude, yeah, I would too. That I wouldn't have to like be around other people when I'm in there.
Yeah.
I think, although I've had some like good ministry moments with people in there, I've had people just start asking me about Jesus. So there's plenty.
Really?
Oh yeah, a couple.
Because you're reading a book about Jesus.
Yeah, usually, or like a book that like is faith based in some way. So,
dude, I don't know if I've ever had a stranger ask me about Jesus.
Really? It happens to me a lot.
That's special for you. It must.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like in the context of a conversation, and then usually I'll start talking about it, and then
Okay.
I had one.
It might be because you probably are better at conversations with people. I mean, you are, but you probably initiate them.
Yeah.
With people more. And
I also work at a church. So it always comes up.
Oh yeah, because
so whenever
what do you do?
Yeah, it's always so it's always like, oh, okay. And
what about besides that then? If they don't ask you what do you do for work?
Well, I used to like intentionally tell people about Jesus because that's just in my nature. I think it's like one of the things that God has put on. Like I think that's I think the gift of evangelism is something that God has given me to some degree.
Okay.
That started when I first became a believer because I was like, dude, God is real. Jesus is real. This is crazy. Like, this is actually real. Guys, you gotta for me, I was like, oh dude, I found gold. I gotta like share it with people. Yeah. But one book that's, I think Heaven Imagined is one. So that was, the foreword was done by Don Piper from 90 Minutes in Heaven, like the thing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So he like was part of the book, but it was another guy, and he researched like 1,000 life after death testimonies, and he picked the ones that seemed to be the most believable. And he said he also picked ones that were from people who would have nothing to gain, like surgeons and people who had like high social standing, because they would not gain money from it. They would actually be more ridiculed than anything for. Okay. I like that it's not just a testimony. It's like a concept about the afterlife, about heaven. He talks a lot about like New Jerusalem and all this stuff. And he's basing it all on these people's testimonies. And it's super cool. What we were talking about earlier, where it just kind of reframes your mindset, and you're like, oh yeah, this is a really short test run that we're doing right now. This is not the final thing that we're going to be doing. Like where we are headed is so much better. It's so much different. Like God has such a so much bigger of a plan than what's going on right now. So it really helps me keep that in mind with all different kinds of decisions that I'm making. So I've really appreciated that book. I was a little sad when actually I lost it halfway through at the gym. And so I went and bought a new copy of it, which
someone else might be benefiting from it now.
That's what I mean. I'm sure someone's benefiting from the gross, sweaty book. Like it's just like, cause I was like sweating at it. Yeah. Just, but like I have like dyslexia. I didn't realize that for a long time. And, so I haven't been like officially diagnosed, but I was really close with someone who has dyslexia and was diagnosed. And I read out loud to them for like, I don't know, like 30 seconds. And they were like, dude, you're dyslexic. And I was like, I knew something, you know, and I always had a sense that maybe I was. So now I've just been like, I'm going to read a ton. Like I read almost 4 or 5 times a week, at least. I'm constantly trying to like strengthen that weakness. And I think I've heard hear the phrase like leaders are readers or readers are leaders, whatever it is. And I think that's true.
Is that your dyslexia right there?
Yeah, that is my dyslexia.
Okay. I was going to ask, like, how else does it present itself?
It's mostly when I'm reading, like stuff it just gets out of order sometimes when you're trying to process it. But creatively, it's really helpful for coming up with ideas. It's sometimes easy to get creative with anything, with a sentence, a song structure. It makes it easier to put things in different order naturally, and to see things in different order naturally without even having to try. So it's helpful. I see it being really helpful in certain areas, but
yeah, I get that, dude. I have a lot of crazy things going on in my brain.
I can tell.
That just don't make sense.
Yeah.
You can tell?
Oh, I can tell. I can tell, Jerry. Yeah.
What's
no,
that
I mean, I just, that's just like Seinfeld. I can tell, Jerry. That's not actually from Seinfeld, but that just, yeah, no, I mean, you're definitely a very creative person.
Oh, I'm talking about negative things. I'm not talking about, is that almost a spit take?
Yeah.
No, yeah,
not
I'm not saying like there's a benefit there. I'm saying that, like there's some issues, but yeah. It's anybody, I guess. It may be easier for you to accept dyslexia and like openly admit it.
Yeah.
Which maybe others are not as secure to do that, but maybe it's because it's like such a smaller type of a thing. It's not maybe. And I don't know if it's like in different levels, like amounts of.
I'm sure it is.
It's got to be like a spectrum, but it's at the. It's at the level where you're not afraid of opening up about it, I guess.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Yeah, there's like, I think some things that are going on with me and how I function or like how I feel that I am, that are, I think, are sometimes they would be difficult for me to open up about. I almost want to say it, but I don't know if I'm ready to like talk about it. And it's probably not that big of a deal. I'm probably making it a bigger deal than it is. People are flawed, so they might start to view me in a different way. Yeah, I think, or think they have to change how they respond to me or like interact with me because I now opened up about this thing. Yeah. And I don't want that to happen. I want it to be I want every interaction I have with anybody to be free of any of that.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah. There's things in my life like that are like that too.
Well, dude, this was an awesome podcast.
Yeah.
For sure. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, dude. Thank you for having me, man. This is awesome. This is a great conversation.
Yeah.
Really cool podcast. I can't wait to see it, man. Yeah, dude. Thanks, man.